Hey everyone, welcome to the Gaming X. Today, I'm excited to be looking at Scribblenauts Showdown on the Nintendo Switch. Now remember to subscribe if you do like the video today, but with that being said, is this the party game you need? Let's find out. So let's start with graphics, and there's not really too much to be said here. If you've played Scribblenauts before, then you're gonna feel right at home. These are the low detailed hand-drawn animations we expect, but I've actually always been a fan of these, and the series would simply not work without them. If it's worked for you in past entries to this universe, you're gonna be more than happy here. On top of the standard graphics, there's some nice touches as well to elevate the title above most party games recently. First is the board. Yes, you move around a board in the showdown mode, and it's broken down into a path through elements of a city. Yes, it's basic again, and it's definitely not original in idea, but it does continue the franchise's graphical history. It introduces a gameplay method I've missed from so many party games recently. Now additionally, on top of this then, there's also character customization, and while yes it is simple, I really enjoyed picking out my character and switching it up every so often. Options here, they include things like outfits, accessories, all the way through to your hair. Now it's not the most robust, but it does enough to keep you entertained and add that extra bit of value to the game. Finally, to break up the 2D art stylings, they've incorporated the use of a somewhat 3D card deck when it comes to gameplay that really sums up the minigame selection. And they've also included a 3D word selection wheel, which works particularly well. We'll actually be addressing that in the gameplay feature shortly. Overall, it's everything I've expected, with a few small visual flourishes that make it the best looking Scribblenauts yet, and it elevates it above most in the genre in recent years. So let's jump into the bulk of this review, gameplay. Scribblenauts Showdown presents 3 different options with Versus Mode, Showdown, and Sandbox. Now let's kick things off with Showdown first of all, and this is where I suggest every player starts. This is the board game mode where you and up to 3 friends can compete to reach the end. I just want to add here, be warned, I'm not sure really why, but when you compete against the AI, it is only yourself and one other competitor. It really lowers that difficulty level and sense of accomplishment in your victories. When it comes to the board itself, progression is attached to a selection of cards and minigames, and you'll progressively rotate the choice from player to player. Complete the minigame, and the winner progresses in movement alongside the card's value. When it comes to each player's turn, there is additionally what I would like to call wildcards with attributes attached. Just a few examples include move another player forward X amount of spaces, move them backwards, or meet in the middle of the board with them. These games additionally award stars to the winner, which can be used to unlock in-game items, and it's a nice addition to drive longevity of the title in your quest for all the loot, if you're that way inclined. Overall, it's a simple yet effective system that works well, and I'm happy they opted to include a mode like this with more than just a mini-game selection screen, as it adds another layer to these mini-game party titles. It's especially true if players start to pull someone back or push another forward. It can be a lot of fun. Finally, showdown games move quickly, and you're looking at each round clocking in at about 15 minutes for 2 players, up to around 30 minutes for 4 players. Now next, we have Versus Mode, and this really is simple. It's a mini-game selection screen where you unlock more options with progression, and you can jump into any at your pleasure. As per Showdown, this works whether that's versus a single AI opponent or a group of friends. This is the ultimate pick up and play mode where you simply avoid the games you don't like and quick reward. Finally, for the game modes, we have Sandbox, and this is a bit more reminiscent of the Scribblenauts of the past. These are small, self-contained environments where you can navigate them, find characters, and help solve word puzzles with them. As enjoyable as it is, you're going to finish this in probably 45 minutes max. Honestly, all this section of the game really did for me was make me wish this was a full-fledged entry in the Scribblenauts universe. You'll get a really small taste of just how good it can be, but unfortunately, it's just over before you know it. Now I will say it's still a welcome addition as a bonus feature, but just don't expect much and don't buy it solely for this reason. The last two things I will say about gameplay is number one, just be aware there's no online multiplayer here. That might come as a shock to many of you. It is 2018 and I think it's absolutely criminal. But they've clearly went in with the intention of keeping this in single households where up to 4 players can play. And for that reason as well, just be prepared to play this game with a single Joy-Con. This is not going to accommodate those that want to play with 2. This is because you're going to use it one to the side, so you can control that individual player, but it also incorporates motion controls as well for some of those mini games. I will say though, the controls always worked well for me. I had no problems with it, but it can be a bit of a pain using such a small controller at times. Now let's talk about what is by far the most important element when it comes to Scribblenauts Showdown, the mini games. So one thing I do want to point out first is a smart design decision. They've stripped the games down to 2 modes, either speedy or word. Speedy are just jump in and play, no puzzle solving required, when word attaches a typical Scribblenauts word puzzle prior to launching a minigame. This word selection you make then impacts the challenge and it can give you potentially an upper hand. A great example is the Red Rover game. Here you must progress in a space buggy to the finish line, dragging objects behind you. Your answer to that beginning puzzle though will dictate what you are dragging. So let's say it asks you to choose an animal. Those that type in whale are going to go a lot slower than those that entered mouse. It's a fun inclusion that puts the Scribblenauts franchise stamp on these games. With that out of the way, let's talk game quality. And as with almost all party games, it is a mixed bag. Before I get onto the good, let's talk bad. And there's a few games in here that simply, well, they just annoy me. That's the cell phone game Clones. $49.99 retail, and I found myself playing Flappy Birds and a shallow variation of Angry Birds where all of the puzzle elements have been removed. It's frustrating to see this level of laziness, especially after earlier in the year when we had Party Planet with a snake clone. Apart from this though, I will concede and say this is one of the more fun party game titles I've played in quite some time. The minigames generally, bar these two, are entertaining, with varying levels of difficulty from Red Rover, which we discussed, to an option where you must speed it your way through a selection you make with the included word puzzle to open the game. There's even actually a fishing game which I was dreading, but it turned out to be hilarious. This is a clever combination of Scribblenauts and party game to make a unique variation on genre conventions. Fortunately, even the games I didn't enjoy so much had fantastic control schemes, and that's a theme throughout with this title. They are all responsive and intuitive, and that's a welcome addition, meaning even when I didn't like something, I could at least give it my best attempt and I could get through that playthrough without feeling any frustration. The dislike here, it was purely from preference and not a technical standpoint, so credit to the game there. This is designed as any to entertain multiple audiences and just casual gamers, so I'm sure we will all have games we dislike and that we love. In fact, while we were on the technical side, the word selection wheel, while looking somewhat confusing at first, is a fantastic control scheme and it works so well. After you first try it, it's just going to feel so natural. I loved it personally. My final thought on the minigames is I do wish they provided more options and a bit more when it comes to depth. These are very shallow experiences, and with only 27 minigames, you're going to see everything in a matter of hours. It really could have benefited from some extra content, but I will say I still really had a good time here. I'm not sure there's enough to keep many coming back following just a few hours, except for either very young gamers who are clearly the target audience here, achievement hunters on the PS4 or Xbox One variants, or when, of course, you have a group of friends over. But isn't that the idea of this game anyway? So just before we go to that final verdict, I want to touch on audio very briefly. There's again not a lot to say here. I really enjoyed the music. It's definitely repetitive, but because of the quickfire nature of this game, it works well and it reinforces the Scribblenauts universe. When it comes to sound effects, the minigames, they have some really nice little sound effects in there to add some environmental values, but don't expect too much. Generally, it's average at best, but it does more than enough for the genre. So the final verdict, and Scribblenauts finally makes its return to consoles, and for many, it's not the game they hoped for. I was nervous when I found out it was a party game, but I can say it does succeed at many levels where others fail. All the minigames are fun, the visuals are fantastic. The Switch is by far the definitive edition of this game. Not only can you share your controller, which makes it a lot easier to get groups together, you have the great portability nature of the system in itself, which works really well with this title. And on top of this, the speedy round has the intended motion controls, a feature that is not available on the PS4 or Xbox One version as far as I'm aware. My biggest problem though, outside of that shallow gameplay that I mentioned and somewhat the limited amount of minigames, is this. Scribblenauts Showdown is squarely targeted at younger gamers, especially when it comes to the AI competition. The rest of us will only pull this out once in a while when friends are over. Now I'm not sure that's a bad thing, that's entirely what this has been designed for, but it's worth knowing. For me, it just highlights that it misses in an area which made the last few Scribblenauts titles so special. An ability to challenge no matter the age group. I have no question in recommending this for younger gamers or those who are looking for a fun game to pull out when their friends are around. Just expect to sacrifice any single player longevity, it's just way too easy and you'll face no challenge at all. I'd expect to get maybe 2 to 3 hours at the most out of this in single player. Overall though, I had a lot of fun with my time. It was an exceptional title when I was with a group of friends, and I can say all of the mini games, even though I didn't like some personally, they all felt fantastic, and the control schemes, they just work so smoothly. The Gaming X awards Scribblenauts Showdowns a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching today. If you like what you saw, then consider hitting subscribe. We really do appreciate it, and we especially appreciate those that have subbed so far. We'll see you on the next Gaming X.